50 people on average are killed every single day in America with guns, and that number is rising. So how do law enforcers secure safe convictions? With increasing distrust of the police, one company believes it has a solution. The company ShotSpotter places dozens of sensitive recording devices in an area. Computers then listen out for gunshots and then alert the police. More than 100 US cities now use the technology. However, the company has become deeply controversial, with some questioning whether the technology works as well as the company claims. James Clayton reports.
A computer can get a lot of information from a waveform. That's the basic premise behind ShotSpotter, that an algorithm can detect a gunshot.
What makes the system so compelling, we believe, is the fact that a full 80 to 95% of gunfire goes unreported.
Small mics are placed around a neighbourhood. When a gunshot is fired, the mics pick up that sound, how long it took to reach the sensor, and from which direction, effectively triangulating the shot. Then a human analyst reviews the information and alerts the police.
So we're listening to that, we're looking how far does the sound travel.
See, that sounds like gunfire to me.
In this case, I think you might be right. We've got a directional sensor pattern. I'm going to call it gunfire. I'm going to submit it. It's going to send it over to our agency. And you can look up there. It just popped up right now.
So it was that quickly there are going to be police going to that location.
Correct.
Right now.
The police in the Californian city of Fresno say one of their shooting incidents proves ShotSpotter's effectiveness. In April 2017, Corey Ali Muhammad decided he wanted to shoot as many white men as he could.
"911, state your emergency."
It just sounded like there were a bunch of gunshots.
How many shots?
15 or 16.
Fresno police officer Bill Dooley describes what happened.
He comes up to the passenger side where the first victim is, lifts up his weapon and fires 4 shots and kills our first victim.
911, state your emergency.
This is when our very first ShotSpotter activation comes out.
Muhammad went on to kill 2 other people in the space of 90 seconds. Although there were plenty of 911 calls, they were delayed and unspecific. ShotSpotter, however, was alerting police to his route, 1 shot at a time. Police identified where he was going and arrested him.
ShotSpotter gave us the clear path that he was taking.
So for you, ShotSpotter in this scenario was essential?
Oh, absolutely. ShotSpotter is the reason why we were able to apprehend him and stop that killing spree.
For years, ShotSpotter has been used by police forces pretty uncontroversially.
That was till lawyers around the country started to ask questions, difficult questions, about how the tech actually works. They started wondering whether it's as accurate as the company claims, and if it isn't, what the consequences are for American justice. And those questions have been loudest here in the city of Chicago.
Michael Williams was released from jail 2 months ago, having been accused of murder. In May last year, on his way back home, he gave a lift to Safari and Herring, a man from his neighbourhood. Just 2 minutes later, his passenger was shot dead at an intersection.
He wasn't even in the car 2 minutes before another car pulled up and opened fire. Struck him in the head. And I was hollering out to my passenger, "Are you all right? You okay? You hit?" And he wasn't saying anything. And when I glanced up at him from the floor, I saw the blood coming down, and I just put the pedal all the way to the floor.
The man later died in hospital. A few months later, Michael was arrested for first-degree murder. His lawyer says it was ShotSpotter evidence that placed the gunshot around the location of his car that was crucial in his arrest.
The police had no witness who said that they saw Michael shoot anyone. They had no weapon. They had very little evidence in this case other than a ShotSpotter alert, which directly led to him being charged and incarcerated in this case.
After 11 months in jail, and despite ShotSpotter giving the police a detailed forensic report, or DFR, attesting to the location of the gunshot, the prosecution suddenly withdrew their evidence. The case was dropped.
It's well known on that DFR and also our standard contracts that we don't warrant or stipulate to detecting what's called suppressed gunfire. And suppressed gunfire are gunfire that happens indoors or gunfire incident that happens in a car. It became very clear at some point in time that with that explanation, that was in conflict with the prosecutor's theory of the case.
And suppressed gunfire are gunfire that happens indoors or from a small caliber.
Brendan Max doesn't buy that response. We showed him ShotSpotter's explanation.
What Mr. Clark just said is two things. There was a gunshot here, so ShotSpotter worked correctly. Mr. Herring was shot, so our report was right. And on the other hand, he's saying, don't trust our report because the shot may have come from inside a vehicle under one potential theory of this case. Those things are contradictory.
Michael's case made Brendan Max wonder. ShotSpotter claims that its technology is 97% accurate. But how do they actually know that? Fresno police invited me on a night patrol to see how ShotSpotter works for real.
So that was the activation.
Oh, that was it right there?
Yeah.
What became clear was how difficult it was to work out whether a ShotSpotter alert had been right, whether a gunshot had actually been fired.
This is where the ShotSpotter was indicating.
So it was literally underneath this tree where I thought the shots had happened?
Yeah, that's what they said.
The ShotSpotter shows them up on the curb underneath the tree.
Okay.
There's nothing there. Nothing in the front yard, nothing on the curb, and nothing in the street.
Okay.
Do you think there was a gunshot here?
It's hard to. I mean, you can't really say if there's no evidence of a gunshot or.
It could have been a drive-by and the casings are inside the car.
Yeah, or a revolver and the casings don't, eject and we can't find them.
This is actually pretty typical. In fact, one study in Chicago found that in only 9% of ShotSpotter alerts was there any evidence of a gunshot on the ground. It doesn't mean there wasn't a gunshot, it's just hard to know there was one.
But that leads to the next, kind of obvious follow-up question. If it's so difficult to work out whether a shot has actually been fired on the ground, how does ShotSpotter know with such confidence that it's 97% accurate?
ShotSpotter says that 97% accuracy figure is based on officers listening to ShotSpotter's recordings and telling them when they got it wrong, something they call ground truth.
We rely on ground truth from agencies to tell us when we miss detections or when we misclassify.
The problem is, it's very difficult to tell often whether a gunshot has been fired just by listening to the sound on a phone.
So it's actually pretty difficult to know whether there was a gunshot fired or not.
I mean, definitely could have been, and it's just we don't have anything to prove that it was, so we just clear out the call and that's pretty much it.
Right. Just from listening to it, did you think it was?
Yeah, it sounded like a gunshot.
Yeah?
It sounded like it, but who knows for sure.
Right, it's always, you're not an acoustic expert.
Yeah, exactly.
This is the big criticism, that the methodology that ShotSpotter is using to calculate its accuracy is flawed.
Other people have said about the general stat, that 97% stat, that it's not rooted in scientific rigor, i.e. it hasn't been scrutinized, it hasn't been peer reviewed. Do you think that's fair?
So it's certainly a fact that there hasn't been an academic peer review of the service, but I would push back in saying that it hasn't been analyzed. It's been analyzed for 20 years across 100 plus customers that are using it every single day.
It's been analyzed for 20 years across 100 plus customers that are using it every single day.
What Mr. Clark had to talk about there was marketing, it wasn't science. And to hear the CEO of this corporation say that that is the basis for the claims that they've made for many years, for the evidence that has been used not only against Michael, but against hundreds of defendants around the country, it's outrageous.
Yet despite this, police forces across the country do believe that ShotSpotter works.
If we ever find out that it's not worth the money, or it's inaccurate, or it's actually hurting our efforts instead of helping our efforts, then I'm going to look into getting rid of it. But right now, it's proving to be very useful.
And yet, if it isn't so accurate, this could have huge knock-on effects for the criminal justice system.
In the last 4 or 5 months, I'm aware of dozens of Chicagoans who have been arrested based on ShotSpotter evidence. I'm sure that has played out in cities across the country.
Ultimately, ShotSpotter works. We just don't know how well. And until the reliability has been independently established, there will continue to be questions about whether this surveillance technology should be used so widely.